We know that week 17 is the championship for a lot of you in fantasy football, and we also know you got to get your lineup just right. Let's go through all the matchups and talk about who you should be starting and who you should be sitting. Now, these players definitely should be in your lineup. This is the must-start list for week 17. It includes Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams, and Jonathan Taylor. Before you set your winning lineups for your fantasy championship, why don't you set your winning picks on Underdog? And look, if you haven't tried Underdog yet, start with this freebie. On Christmas Day, Pat Mahomes just gets 1 yard. You win that pick. Take the higher in 0.5 total yards. That's a free pick for you, and you can combine it with any other pick that you like. Just make sure that you use code ENDGAME when you sign up for the first time, because you also get up to $1,000 worth of bonus cash from your initial deposit. So speaking of Christmas, we're going to have not one but two games on Wednesday this week. We're also going to have another Thursday game, some more Saturday games. You're going to have to get your lineup set nice and early. So let's start with the first game on Wednesday. It's the Chiefs taking on the Steelers in Pittsburgh. This is going to be a tricky one. Man, we really thought Isaiah Pacheco coming back would make things simple, but it hasn't. Now, I don't even know if you can trust Pacheco.
I don't think you can. He got less carries than Kareem Hunt, less targets than Kareem Hunt, and Kareem Hunt got the goal line carry. There's no way. And against this tough Steelers defense, this is championship week. I'm going to avoid Pacheco.
Going to avoid him. And if you watch the waiver video for this week, you know what I said? You're not starting him. You could even drop him if you need room for some other position. Now, on the other hand, Kareem Hunt, sure, splitting carries, but he actually got more touches. He actually scored a touchdown last week. Do you like Kareem Hunt more than Pacheco?
Maybe slightly, but not enough to start him this week.
I don't want to start him either. Again, this is a road game against the Steelers and that run defense, so you can't feel good enough about him. But I will say this, in an odd way, I actually like his pick on Underdog because it's pretty low, 30.5 rushing yards. The last 2 weeks, he's gotten 55 and 45. So even Pacheco being there, Hunt has been involved enough. I'm going to take that super low line, take the higher on Kareem Hunt rushing yards, combine it with your free pick of Pat Mahomes just getting 1 yard. So if you haven't tried Underdog, your very first pick seems like a good bet. Now we know the Steelers also deploying that timeshare. Start with Najee Harris. Again, it's a tough run defense for the Chiefs here. Can you trust him?
No chance. This is the toughest run defense you could face. And when's the last time Najee's even been good? Definite avoid here.
Exactly. Going to have to avoid here. Just not enough upside. And then Jaylen Warren, the other part of that committee, it's probably an avoid as well.
Got to be an avoid here. Just not enough upside for these guys.
The second game on Christmas Day is going to be the Ravens and the Texans. And no, despite last week's performance, we still don't have Derrick Henry as a no doubt must start. But is he at least regained some of your confidence?
Yeah, dude. Came through in a tough matchup. This is another tough matchup, and he hasn't scored in 4 straight games, but it didn't matter last week. I still think Derrick Henry has to be a very strong start.
Even though, like you said, this is a tough run defense, but it's the king. You know, this is one of those where I probably shouldn't have doubted him as much last week, although it's weird that he still is not finding the end zone. I don't know why, but still, I'd say he's a very strong start as well. Now, on the other hand, Joe Mixon, again, a guy who'd been carrying you all season long. Did he take you this far just to let you down for the duration of the fantasy playoffs?
Maybe. He let you down last week. This is another very tough matchup against Baltimore, but at the same time, he's a workhorse. He's been so good all season. I think I still have to consider him a strong start, but like lower end of the strong starts.
Well, last week's bust didn't surprise me. Again, he's not a guy you need to outright bench, but it's still a tough matchup. He still looks worn down. You got to wonder with Tank Dell out, are they going to have to feed him more? I mean, I think I can only put him in the solid category because he will catch some passes. They're probably going to try to make him, the focal point of the offense early in this game. I just don't know how successful it will be, but he could still score touchdowns as well, so I think he's solid. And then on Thursday, we're going to have the Seahawks taking on the Bears in Soldier Field. So this backfield is now all of a sudden up in the air again because Kenneth Walker left early with an ankle injury. If he gives it a go on a short turnaround, would you risk it?
He's been so bad. I mean, this is a good matchup against the Bears, but you got to think on a short week, there's no way he's 100%. He only saved you last week because he caught a bunch of passes. I can only put Kenneth Walker on a short week, banged up as a flex.
Yeah, even if he plays here, he's not 100%. He has been pretty rough, honestly, as a runner. I'm not going to count on the pass catching. It's really just a floor he's giving you anyways. I almost want to just say outright pass, but I'll say just a flex if you really don't have a better option. And so now Zach Charbonnet becomes interesting because if Walker's out, I think you got to feel like he's at least, a strong start?
I think he'd have to be. This is not a good Bears defense. He's going to get all the touches in this backfield. We've seen what he can do when it's his backfield. I think if Walker is out, Charbonnet is a strong start.
Agree. I mean, despite what he hasn't done the last 2 weeks, it's a great matchup. Bears, one of the worst run defenses. He's getting all the touches. You should feel good enough about him. So with no Walker, I think he's in the strong tier, one of the highest end RB2s. If Walker plays, he's pretty much just unplayable though. And then there's DeAndre Swift, who's just kind of barely clinging to fantasy relevance at this point.
You're barely clinging to fantasy relevance. Not relevant enough to start him in championship week. No way.
Exactly. I mean, I don't want to say he's an outright must sit, but just a desperation flex again. Now we have 3 games on Saturday. So the first one is going to be Chargers and the Patriots. Just when you thought you had these backfields figured out, all of a sudden everything is changing because J.K. Dobbins, his practice window has opened. He may return from IR this week. If he does, is he going to help you win a championship?
I don't know if he's going to help you win a fantasy championship, but this is a great matchup, and I got to think, if they're going to activate him off of IR, it's probably because they feel like they need him, and they're going to use him, and he's good to go. So I think if that happens, I'm going to say a solid start in a very good matchup.
I mean, obviously there's risk here that he is not fully healthy. I think that's just kind of how we felt about him all season long, right? We're just waiting for him to hit IR, and he did, but I guess if they activate him and he's starting, you figure they're going to give him most of the touches. It's a good matchup, but I think solid is as high as I'll go. And it's now Gus Edwards coming off a 2-touchdown game. Is he going to continue to be the workhorse? Is he going to be the 1B here? Is he startable either way?
Well, if Dobbins is activated, I'm not starting Gus Edwards. But if Dobbins is out again, I'll say he's at least a flex. I don't want to get too carried away by last week. That was his first double-digit game of the entire season.
Yeah, this was encouraging on the one hand because, as I mentioned, the most carries he's had since week 2. He actually had 68 yards, which for him is a lot, but you can't count on touchdowns and the floor is not high. So despite the good matchup, even if Dobbins is not active, I think he's just a flex as well. And if Dobbins is active, no to Gus. And now with the Patriots, yeah, it's been Ramondre Stevenson all along, but he put the ball on the ground again. And now Jared Mayo is hinting that he might not even be the starter anymore. So with that said, is there any way you can start Ramondre?
This is a tough matchup against this Chargers run defense. There's always a threat that he fumbles and maybe gets benched for the game. Man, very risky flex this week.
I can't say outright bench because he will still get some touches. It's not like they're going to sit him out the whole game, but you can't feel great here. I would rather avoid if possible. So I know like this is not going to be a huge boost for Antonio Gibson, but maybe he gets more touches. Maybe he starts the game. Does that mean that he's maybe in a fantasy lineup anywhere?
No way. This is way too risky. I mean, didn't we see this earlier in the year when they were like, oh, Antonio Gibson's getting the start, and then after the first series, it was all Ramondre again? Way too risky.
Exactly. This doesn't make me interested in Gibson. I'm just going to avoid. The next Saturday game is the Broncos at the Bengals. You still roll with Chase Brown. Don't worry about last week. Do you roll with either Broncos running back? I say either because Jaleel McLaughlin's still hurt. Audric Estime took the lead last week. Is it going to be him this week?
It might, but I mean, he only had a few more carries and no receptions. I know it's the Bengals and it's a good matchup, but I still don't want to start Estime.
You know what my answer is. I'm not trusting any of these because you know that it's probably going to go the other way. He being Sean Payton, going to all of a sudden switch it to Javonte as the guy. These guys are totally touchdown dependent. No to Audric Estime. Javonte Williams, I'm saying no to him too.
Yeah, no to Javonte.
And then we're going to have the Cardinals at the Rams. Kyron Williams still a must start. He's been rolling. James Conner, I'd like to say the same, but then he left with a knee injury last week. What's the word on him?
Well, yeah, this is going to be a tough one because certainly James Conner has been great and you want to play him, and this is a good matchup against the Rams. I think if Conner is good to go when he plays, he's got to be a strong start.
Right. I really hope that he's cleared so that everyone who's got Conner can play him. Obviously, it's not the Panthers this week, but still, he's healthy. He's got the lead role here. He's a strong start. Let's just hope that's the case. Then the Colts at the Giants. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor not only showed enough last week to go back to the must-start territory, but it's the Giants. So yeah, you got JT, you're good. Are you good with Tyrone Tracy?
Barely. I mean, he came through last week with a touchdown catch barely in the back of the end zone, but only 7 carries last week, 26 yards. There is not much of a ceiling here and not a very big floor either. It is a good matchup against the Colts, so risky flex.
Yeah, if you look just at his rushing numbers, and that includes his usage, it's not good at all. So just a risky flex. You're hoping for a touchdown. You're hoping for a big play. It could happen or it could not. Now we have the Jets at the Bills. So this seems like a mismatch, but we'll see. They could keep it close. Breece Hall, still the guy in New York for what it's worth. This seems like a tough spot for him, though.
Yeah, the Bills have not been good against the run. They also give up the most receiving yards and second most receptions to running backs. I feel like this is going to be a good Breece Hall game, honestly. He kind of retook over this backfield last week. I'm going to chase that, and I'm going to say Breece Hall a strong start this week.
I wish I had that kind of confidence in Breece. I mean, he's not getting as many touches as I would like. I know the Bills aren't good on run defense, but really, they can be able to establish the run. I mean, Breece is at least solid still compared to most other running backs, but I don't know if I would go much higher than that. Now on the Buffalo side, James Cook, like this whole offense, has just been on a roll. 100 yards rushing in 3 of the last 4. Is he close to a must start?
Yeah, he's got to be one of the closest guys to a must start. You got to start James Cook. Strong start.
Very, very strong start. James Cook doesn't even need a ton of touches to be productive. So, yeah, James Cook, you pretty much roll him out. Titans at the Jaguars. Another pair of frustrating backfields here. So let's start with Tony Pollard. I mean, he keeps showing up in the injury report, but he keeps playing. But a couple of games in a row now, he's been disappointing. What do you do with Pollard?
On the one hand, it is the Jaguars, but on the other hand, he is nowhere near 100%. He hasn't been good. He could score, but he's also losing touches to Tyjae Spears. I think, again, only because it's a good matchup, risky flex.
Had such a good season up till this point, you got to feel like he's only gutting it out because he wants to hit those markers for his incentives. And, you know, he's showing something in terms of toughness, but he's not showing enough for fantasy production. So risky flex. You mentioned Tyjae Spears. I mean, obviously going to be a popular pickup this week, but does that mean you put him in your lineup?
I think so. I'm not going to say a strong start or anything, but I think he's at least solid. He had more carries than Pollard last week. He's getting more of the receiving work. He's obviously not banged up, and this is the Jaguars. So I'm going to say Spears solid.
I agree, solid as well, because there's one thing, even if he's not getting a ton of opportunities with Pollard still there, it's the Jaguars. They've given up more touchdowns to running backs than any team except for the Panthers, and I think the Bears. I mean, look, you don't want to count on touchdowns, but he's getting the ball. He's a good pass catcher. Let's say he should be solid. And there's the Jaguars running backs. Travis Etienne, I don't know. He's pretty much dead to me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're still in your championship with Travis Etienne, I really hope you don't need him.
And Tank Bigsby, well, he's still getting more carries. He's scoring a touchdown once in a while. Does he have value this week?
I mean, touchdown or bust here, and really bust potential is very high. I'm not starting Tank Bigsby.
Well, I think he's at least a flex option because it's the Titans, also not a very good defense. So if I had to pick one of these, which I really don't want to do, I think Tank could be flexed. Packers going to take on the Vikings this week. Big game for both those teams. Possibly a big game for Aaron Jones. Revenge part 2 against his former team. How will he do?
Aaron Jones is always so tough because in real life he's almost good every single week, but the fantasy production isn't always there. But he does offer a very high floor with a decent ceiling, and this matchup doesn't scare me. So I'm going to say a very solid start, like borderline strong start.
I'll go there. I'll say he's a strong start because, Aaron Jones does some of his best work late in the season. This Vikings team is rolling. I don't feel like they're going to come from behind against the Packers. The Vikings do like to pass the ball quite a bit with Kevin O'Connell there, but still, Aaron Jones is going to get fed. I think he should be a strong start. All right, so not quite as exciting of a game, but the Raiders and the Saints are going to battle this week. Let's start with the Raiders. It's, I think, Alexander Mattison as the lead back here, technically. Any interest in Mattison?
It kind of feels like Tank Bigsby to me. Like a running back I don't want to start in a good matchup. He could score. I really don't want to do this.
No, I really don't. But he did score last week. He could score. It's a good matchup. So I guess he's at least in the flex conversation. What about Amir Abdullah? Any better or worse?
I mean, you got to feel a little bit worse here. I guess if game script gets out of hand, he'll catch more passes, but is game script going to get out of hand here? So, yeah, I'm not starting Abdullah either.
He would be more valuable possibly if there was a game where they might have to pass, and it's the Saints. I doubt it's going to happen. I can pass on Abdullah. And for the Saints, it is Kendre Miller still, but I mean, despite the good matchup against the Raiders, he's on the Saints offense, which is now contending for one of the worst in the NFL.
Yes, definitely. The good news here for Kendre is this game script should be closer at least, so maybe he won't get game scripted out like he did on Monday night, but still very risky here. I really thought Kendre would be somebody you could count on down the stretch. I don't want to count on him in my championship. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, say avoid.
I would completely avoid if not for the fact that it's the Raiders. This actually could be a close game. I think he's flex worthy if you're down bad at running back. The Panthers are going to take on the Bucs this week. Let's talk about a pair of really good running backs. And Chuba Hubbard, first and foremost, won the game for them in overtime last week, helped some teams win in fantasy. Can he do it again this week?
I don't know. This is a tough spot. I've been talking about this Bucs defense. I think it's ever since Vita Vea came back from injury, they've been much tougher against the run. Really shut down Rico Dowdle, who had been running for over 100 yards a game multiple weeks in a row. But at the same time, Chuba's the workhorse here. He's been mostly good, but I think because of the matchup, I can only say solid start, but a very good solid start.
And you were right. Even Rico Dowdle, who had been doing great for the past few weeks, got shut down against Tampa Bay. But, Chuba does catch more passes. I don't think I can knock him down too far, so I'll also put him at the low end of the solid tier. Then there's Bucky Irving, who, when healthy, is great. I mean, it's the Panthers' run defense. Is there any way you don't start Bucky Irving?
I mean, maybe if you have like Derrick Henry, James Cook, or whoever, or some of the must starts we talked about. But outside of that, no, Bucky Irving has to be a strong start this week.
Has to be a very, very strong start. If you got Bucky, then now you're loving life. Rachaad White might be a little trickier, though, not getting as many carries. Wasn't really that efficient last week. What do you think?
Yeah, but he still does catch passes, but I don't know if this is a game where the Bucs are going to be, in come from behind throw mode like they were against the Cowboys, which I didn't expect that either. So it's still the Panthers, though. He still has touchdown upside. I'll say flex.
White is more involved as a pass catcher when they need it. I don't know if they'll need to go there this week. I mean, Panthers, sure, they've been competitive in most games, but yeah, I don't feel like the Bucs will fall behind or anything, so I think he's just a flex. Dolphins going to Cleveland to take on the Browns this week. Yeah, Devon Achane is everything in that offense. You got him. You keep rolling with him. Jerome Ford actually was most everything, but I think that was really a lot just because Dante Foreman happened to fumble at the goal line early in that game. Do you think Ford continues to see the lion's share of carries and touches in this backfield?
He should. I mean, that was ridiculous that they gave Foreman a carry at the goal line. The guy hadn't played in 6 weeks, and they're like, here, take the ball at the goal line. I mean, what'd you expect? But Ford has been good. Ford has been good even when Foreman is taking touches from him. He always has touchdown upside. He's got pass catching ability. He can always rip off a long run. Not going to say a strong start, but I think Ford is solid this week.
Yeah, I'll go there with solid. I mean, I'd really feel better if they had a better quarterback. But man, Jerome Ford, he catches passes. He has some explosive upside. It makes you wonder why they don't just give him all the touches. But that said, it's not a great matchup, but he should still be solid. Now, Cowboys at Eagles. This doesn't mean anything anymore in terms of playoff implications for the boys, but they have been playing spoiler lately. Can Rico Dowdle help them to at least compete with the Eagles?
I don't think so. He got really shut down last week against Tampa Bay, and annoyingly, Ezekiel Elliott got the only goal line carry. That was really frustrating. This is an even tougher matchup. Not much of a ceiling here. I know he's been so good, but I don't want to start Dowdle this week in this matchup.
It's basically the worst matchup possible unless you're talking about that Chiefs run defense. So you can't feel great about Rico, but at the same time, I'm going to play him over some other guys I've said at least are flex options, so I'll at least put him in the flex tier. Now the Falcons at the Commanders. You're good with one B. Robinson, that's Bijan, and are you good with the other one? That's Brian Robinson for Washington.
Well, if he didn't kill you last week and end your season, you can't feel good, not only because he was so bad last week, 2 fumbles and doing almost nothing. Falcons have been sneaky good against the run. I've been talking about this for a while too. Like, they're a bad defense, but they're good against the run. You can't feel good here. I mean, he's getting the touches. He's still the number one guy here. He could score, but he feels like another touchdown or bust flex.
Yeah, you'd think this is a get right spot after playing the Eagles last week. But like you said, the Falcons are somewhat of a pass funnel defense. I do think B-Rob gets better, but I won't go more than a flex either. And then on Monday night, we're going to have the Lions at the 49ers. The big question is, will Isaac Guerrero actually play again? I mean, early reports sound promising. Are you going to trust it?
It sounds like he's going to play. If he's fully cleared and off the injury report, I feel pretty good about him. It's not the best matchup, of course, against this Lions run defense, but they're not as good as they were earlier in the year. Guerrero has home run ability. He catches passes. If he's good to go, I'll say low-end solid start.
Well, I did feel good about Guerrero last week until another injury popped up. Man, this just feels riskier and riskier every time. We think he's going to play. This matchup isn't as good as last week. I'm going to throw him down in the flex tier. And if Guerrero does get another injury or just isn't good to go, it's going to be Patrick Taylor. We saw how that turned out last week, though.
This might be the hardest no of all the no's I've said. Like, of everybody we talked about, he might be dead last. No chance.
Absolutely no way. If your championship is on the line, every decision matters. Catch all our start sit advice at every position, plus everything else we have to help you win in Week 17 right here.